Hello and welcome to Okaycon 2020 Day 10. That's our virtual summit, our free virtual summit that we're doing right now at WeTurned.OK. And this is also going to be a podcast episode, probably coming out sometime in May or June of 2020. So if you are here for either of those things, welcome, welcome, welcome. And I'm glad to bring you in on this conversation with a beloved guest, a returning champion on WeTurned.OK, Tricia Tomaso, one of my fellow teachers, a colleague of mine from my actual preschool teaching, Ms. Tomaso, which we will call her Tricia, but everybody gets to call her Ms. Tomaso at school, you've been in this gig now for like 30 years, right? 25, 30 years?
30 years.
30 years. Yeah. Wow. You've been on the show, I think probably 3 or 4 times at this point. I'm going to link to those in the notes below this conversation, so you'll be able to find Tricia and listen to her. Tricia, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Welcome. Me too. I'm glad you invited me.
I've been trying to sort of start off these conversations by asking, like, how are things at your house?
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously different. Like for everybody else, this is a different world situation that we are in right now that we've never had to deal with before. But I'm okay. Yeah, my family's okay. We're all healthy and, doing what we need to do with social distancing and hygiene and everything, and just being very careful.
Mm-hmm.
But I know it's a hard time for everyone. Everything is so uncertain.
Yeah, and it's. I would say that what I'm hearing and what I'm experiencing myself is that, like, it was all right for a couple weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and now it's just sort of continuing, and it can feel just so like sort of like such a drudge, like we're just still chugging through the quicksand. And I've noticed in myself a little bit of a tendency to be like, is it really what we have to do? Like, how, what would happen if I stopped? Like, what would happen if I got together with friends or something like that? Like, what would happen if I went outside of this? I don't know if you're experiencing that, but this week I listened to a podcast that really helped me realize, like, the importance of it. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Sawbones podcast. I'm going to actually write down to make sure I link to this in the show notes.
No, I don't think so. I'm not familiar.
So Sawbones is a podcast done by a doctor and her husband, who happens to be a comedian. He's got a couple of other shows. Their names are Justin and Sydney McElroy. Sydney is the doctor, and she does, like, what the whole point of the show is. Basically, they dive into things like they love to talk about human beings and medicine through the centuries and millennia. Like, one of their favorite people to talk about is Pliny the Elder, who apparently tried like all kinds of crazy medical things and thought he was helping, and maybe sometimes he was, but more often it was like, here's these crazy things that humans have done to try to get better. And so for coronavirus, what they're able to talk about right now is like they just did a whole episode on that medicine that isn't helping for coronavirus. I think it's called hydrocloxorone or something like that. But it's a good malaria drug. And I know this is sort of a long intro to this, but basically, Dr. Sydney did a show recently on Anthony Fauci, the infectious diseases epidemiologist, that's sort of at the national level. So it turns out he's been in that position for like 40 years. And a lot of what he knows about how to treat stuff like this and how to help people through it, he learned coming through the AIDS epidemic. And basically
I think he's worked with 5 presidents.
Yeah, exactly. He's worked with so many. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And during that show, one of the things that they talk about is how it can feel exactly like I'm feeling, which is like we're not seeing this, like we've been able to sort of, as a society, keep down the number of deaths and illnesses. Hospitals are not filled to capacity. We're doing okay. And that can make us all feel like, well, what's the point of this? Like, we were going to be fine anyway. And I guess the reason I'm bringing it up is because Dr. Sydney says, the reason that we're doing so well is because enough people are doing this. Like, we have to keep it up. And so that's been making me feel like, okay, I can do it.
Yes, it's because we're doing this that we're keeping the numbers down, so to speak.
Yeah.
Although I wish we didn't have the highest numbers in the world, but it's very, sad situation in certain parts of the country.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true
And
too.
Massachusetts is in the surge right now too. So
Yeah.
it's a little scary. We could be the new York City, soon.
Yeah. I mean, only time will tell, I suppose. But even if that happens, we'll get through it. I know
We will.
I know
and when it's I know people are getting impatient and they want their lives back, and economically they're suffering, but those things we can recover from. You can't recover from death.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to keep that in mind. And I also, I have a friend who is my age. I've known her since I was in first grade, who has been in a nursing home rehab facility for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And, so she's in a very vulnerable state because she has other health issues. And she was diagnosed with COVID yesterday.
Oh boy.
And moved to a facility. So when I think of her and all she's gone through, and then look at my situation, I said to myself, I'm never complaining about being stuck in the house again.
Yeah.
I'm healthy. I'm still working, although, remote learning is a whole different world.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely want to get into that.
So there are people that, we, like my friend, who we need to stay home and we need to continue with social distancing and being careful, because those people that are the most vulnerable need to be protected.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's so when I'm struggling with it, I'm going to think of you and I'm going to think of your friend, and that what I'm doing here, what we are doing here is protecting the people who are most vulnerable.
Other people.
Yeah.
Not only ourselves, but other people.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So you just referenced that you are you're doing distance learning. And I'm so curious. So you work in a preschool program a beloved preschool program, the Ashland Preschool Program. And it's where I got my start as a preschool teacher all those years ago. And it's where we work together. I guess, what are the questions that you're getting from the people that you work with, like from the parents of your children, of the kids in your class, or from other teachers? What kinds of questions are you hearing? What are people thinking about right now?
Well, since, the governor announced on Tuesday, I believe, that our school districts were all closed until the end of the school year.
Mm-hmm.
That brought up a lot. We had questions from the beginning because everything was uncertain, but brought up a whole new set of questions, such as, what happens, for the next 8 weeks. We were thinking, okay, it's 6 weeks into this where we can do this. We might be going back to school. So the next 8 weeks, and what about kids transitioning to kindergarten?
Which is like half the program, right?
All those things. And so, and even then, the summer camp, is that going to happen?
Wow.
And there are lots of questions too about September. That's still uncertain.
Yeah.
What's it going to look like in September if we do go back to school? And there's no way of predicting that right now. I think as we get closer, we'll see, how the health crisis progresses. Are we in a better place? Are we still in the midst of this pandemic where we're social distancing? We don't know.
Yeah. There's a lot of uncertainty about.
And as you said about Dr. Fauci, he had said, we cannot predict the timeline or set the timeline. The virus is doing that.
Mm-hmm.
We have to, be proactive and, but we have to react to where are we at this point and what are the next steps. We can't say, okay, we're definitely going back to school in September. We don't know what it's going to be like then.
Yeah.
And there's So the virus is predicting that, and we need to react accordingly. But there are lots of, questions about that. I worry about our preschool program that I've dedicated 26 years to.
Yep. I mean,
What will that
that's,
look like? If, will school look different then? Are we going to be wearing masks when we go back to school? How do we, if we have to continue with social distancing, how do we do that in a school building? So I think things are going to look very different when school does reopen. But then how does that trickle down and apply to a preschooler?
exactly.
Those are concerning things, like, how do you, and perhaps the parents, seeing their parents with masks and things, and parents explaining why we need to do this. Maybe they'll be used to it by then, but how do you have a preschooler wear a mask? Especially those you're trying to work on developing social skills or language skills, and everybody's mouth is covered.
Yeah, so you can't see.
Just thinking about it is so daunting. I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work. But again, we have to cross that bridge when we come to it, because we don't know what the situation is going to be like in a few months.
Yeah. I can't.
And then I worry too about our enrollment. Like, are people going to be afraid to send their preschoolers?
Yeah.
Are they going to, keep them home another year until the health crisis is over and it's safe? So there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of concerns. And
yeah. And preschool, the preschool it's tuition based, right? For the most part.
Yes, it is tuition based, with the exception of the children with special needs.
Yeah, which is a very small part of it. Yeah, and I mean we're in a sort of not financially. I don't know. We are in a similar situation with our son who goes to a private school. It's a very small private school. And I think one of the concerns is that maybe next year they are experiencing that what you are, which is people basically saying like, gosh, I mean, if it's going to be another virtual year, like, is it worth it to send them? Like, what does that mean? And then so another thing that I've been hearing, because we actually interviewed one of the teachers from his school, from Bay State Learning Center, is people are contacting them and basically saying like, I'm not going back to public school. Like, I don't want my child to go back to public school. We're doing what we're doing here. Can your program be a part of our learning, or my child's learning next year? So people are like, the difference. This pandemic is causing people to think a little bit more outside the box. So it may not all be a bad thing. It's just it's so uncertain.
Yeah, it is. And then, uncertainty creates fear and anxieties, because, we like to know what's happening, what's going to be happening in our lives and have some control over it. And we don't right now.
Yeah.
And I think you have an advantage where you did homeschooling for so long.
It's true.
That I think, you could fall back into, that system with your kids. And but others, some parents, and you're an educator, but most parents have not had to do this with their kids. And I get many emails, and I've made many calls. They're struggling. Like, what do I do? How do I present this? What am I?
Yeah. I mean,
there's a lot of anxiety about that. About how much should my child be doing, and do you suggest they do all the activities you're sending, or can we choose a few? And, I tried to, ease their fears by saying you pick and choose what's right for your family.
Oh, good.
You can only do so much. I mean, you're trying to all of a sudden jump into being a teacher and a parent, and it's really difficult. And many of them just don't know where to start.
Yeah. I've been hearing,
I think they're kind of settling in now and knowing what the expectations could be, but many were wondering, and as I was wondering myself as a teacher, am I doing enough with this new remote learning platform? Like, what, how do I navigate all of this? And
so what does that mean for your students? Like, how are you interacting with your students on a weekly basis, say?
And so this is it's kind of evolved over the time that we've been out of school.
Mm-hmm.
At first I struggled with it too. Like, where do I begin? But what I do now, I've kind of settled into a system. So I use Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
I do circle time on Tuesdays. I do a morning with my morning session and an afternoon session, so a half hour each. And I tried to set it up so that it would sort of replicate what I did at school, so it would seem familiar to kids and just to give them some sense of normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
So I took we had one day to go into school to get materials, and I took my circle time chart. I took all the things that I typically use, and I hang it in my living room, and I sit by it. So it's like it has the calendar and weather and things, and my story cards and books. I took home my curriculum kits that, things that they're familiar with. And I do circle time like I would. I sing the same songs.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, they can have a little bit of sense of
normalcy.
They have it. Yeah, something familiar. And that's been very successful. And the other thing that I did is I set up a YouTube channel. So these are all new things to me.
Yeah, good for you.
I set up a YouTube channel, and I do additional stories or activities. So then the kids can look at them and anytime they would like, or the parents have time, so that some of them may not be able to join that Zoom circle time at that specific
Same
time.
moment. Yep.
So I have the YouTube options where they can watch it anytime they like, and I usually upload something once a week. My teaching assistant, Abby, also does a story time once a week. She does a video, and then I upload it to the channel. I even uploaded some videos of Jerry, our music man. So he had some video. He put some videos on Instagram for the kids, and so I asked his permission. Can I upload them to my YouTube channel? And he said fine. So the kids have been enjoying that too. Another thing that's been a constant for so many years is Jerry.
Yeah.
They get to have their music time with Jerry.
Oh.
And this week I was really excited because we added yoga time, a yoga Zoom time. So Thursday mornings, our physical therapist is leading it for my class. So we did it the first time yesterday. So that was great.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
The other thing that we're doing as a team, we're sending out a weekly activity packet that's theme related according to our curriculum. So we kind of divided it up so that each one of us took a section, but we have activities for every day of the week that relates to whatever a letter is, our theme is for that week, and all the content areas. So there'll be a literacy activity, a math, a fine motor, social activity, mindfulness, gross motor, all of those things for each day. And then the parents can pick and choose. And what we had said, we didn't want to overwhelm. So we say pick 2 or 3 a day, that you feel like your child is an art activity, those kinds of things. So they get a packet every Friday for the next week that has 5 days worth of activities that they can pick and choose from. And the other thing is I have for my students that have learning challenges, have IEPs, I send additional activities. So once a week, I'll send something that relates to specific goals and objectives on their IEP.
Mm-hmm.
Say they've been working on shapes, whatever, learning shape ID. So here's an activity that you can do at home. And then as needed, I've set up private Zoom consults with parents.
Cool.
Invited other, service providers to join. And I've had a couple of private Zooms with kids. I had them this week. We were talking about growing and changing and life cycles, and I had a homework challenge. So they had to make either a caterpillar or a butterfly out of a cardboard tube. And we had read The Hungry Caterpillar and another book from our curriculum called Waiting for Wings. And so then I did show and tell at Circle where they could show what they created.
Oh, so cute.
One student kind of got up late and didn't get to show his project. And so the mom emailed me, is there any way he could show it to you? He's very upset. So I set up a private Zoom, and he and I had this, he showed me this cat. So any way that we can make that connection is so important right now. And I think, I think to myself, it's not so much the academic piece or, that we're focusing on, although I'm following our curriculum. I think the most important thing for me to focus on is their emotional well-being, because I think kids are traumatized by this. They don't know what's going on, so they don't know why they need to stay home. I mean, your parents, I don't know how much parents have told them, but they also pick up on anxiety that could be in the home, or they may have a family member that's sick. So I've done a lot about identifying feelings. I read a book called The Worry Book, those kinds of things, and then ask them, what are they worried about? And this is a book by Todd Parr. I love that author.
I don't know that. I don't know that author.
And so those kinds of things I really want to focus, and I focus on, them trying to understand what's going on and that their feelings are okay.
Yeah.
We're all worried. So at the end of my circle time last week, when I give them a little time to chat with each other, and one student said, Ms. Tomaso, I have something to say. And I said, okay, what do you need? What do you want to tell me? And he said, I hate the coronavirus. And so all that we talked about with the butterflies, all of that went out the window, and all they wanted to talk about was the coronavirus. So I said, I know, I don't like it either. And I wish we could be back at school, but we're all safe and healthy. You're trying to reassure. And then another student chimes in, I hate it too. And you can't hug anybody. So they were, telling all these feelings about it. And so we spent a lot of time just talking about that.
Oh God, that's probably more important right now than anything, right?
Exactly. It was more important than anything and I tell parents that too, that, don't worry if you're not getting, this letter, they're not understanding this, or you're practicing writing their name. Just make sure they feel safe.
Yeah.
And they feel healthy, and their questions are answered, and, they don't have to have unnecessary worry about things. And
yeah. One of my coaching clients,
because when those feelings, and I think you and I talked about this in a previous podcast, when the feelings of anxiety or worry are, building up in children, that it interferes with their learning.
Oh, totally. So, yeah. How do you
not focus on learning anything when you've got all this going on? How we can't focus sometimes on things we need to do with this crisis going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for us. What I'm hearing time and again, I hear from people, and I'm like this myself, who say, I can't concentrate on a book. I just, I keep reading the same paragraph. Doesn't matter what book it is, again and again and again. And it's so common. Or we're struggling to get up because what are you getting up for? You know what I mean? You're struggling to sort of, we were just talking before about how I just took a shower before we jumped on. And all day yesterday, I was like, I got to take a shower. It was today before it happened. Cause it's on the one hand, it's sort of I feel wonderful when I'm clean. On the other hand, it's well, why bother?
Where are you going?
We're having these feelings too. And I think, I just love this point that you're making, which, about how helping, allowing them, giving them a safe place to express their feelings. Can you imagine if you had said something like, oh, we're not talking about the coronavirus, that's not what this is about, or something, invalidating them in that way it can be so harmful. It is so harmful. And I love that you're giving them a place, a safe place to be able to say, I hate the coronavirus, and you can't hug anyone. And
then once that one student brought it up, then they all started talking about it, so.
Yeah. Cause it's really, really what's on their mind. So so much of what you're saying is resonating with the people that I'm working with closely in the Ninja Parenting community, which is my private coaching practice that's online. And so the first thing I wanted to remember to say is one of the moms in there has literally written in erasable or soap or something like that on her mirror, on their bathroom mirror, 3 words: safe, fed, loved. Because that's what she's trying to communicate. Nothing else matters except that he feels safe, fed, and loved, and that he is fed and that he feels loved. And then the other thing I wanted to ask about, and I was wondering if you've heard anything, from the parents of your children or whatever. There has been a serious uptick in like just mischief making, kids not doing things to be mean, but like getting in trouble, getting into things. One kid found like hair cutting buzzers, the safe kind, and shaved his head with them. A kid who like wasted $30 worth of personal care products in the bathtub one night. Kids sticking stickers on furniture, or like chasing the dog on a scooter so that the dog turns around and snaps at them. A parent whose kiddo dumped a bottle of vinegar into the parent's bed, like because they're just at home, and there's so much like opportunity for that kind of thing. I was wondering if you, and for everybody who's listening, if you are one of these parents, I hope you can feel the sort of like commiseration in our voices and our expressions, right? Because like we're not laughing at you.
Sorry about laughing.
We're like, oh my God, like you can totally see kids going down this rabbit hole.
Totally picture it. Yes.
Yeah. And I always try to say too, tragedy plus time equals comedy. So like we got to think about that. But are you hearing anything like that from your from your parents?
I haven't yet, no. So, but I'm sure there are challenges like that are happening because, there's a lot of togetherness that people aren't used to, and, having to supervise your kids all day. And some of these parents are probably working remotely from home too.
Oh yeah.
So they're trying to get work done and supervise the kids and teach the kids when it's so different and everybody's still adjusting. But I can picture those kinds of things happening.
Yeah. What could you say to a parent, or what might you say to a parent who told you about that sort of thing? What would you say to them?
I would probably say that their child is probably not the only one that is getting into mischief, that we're all trying to navigate this whole new world. And there are things that they may not have thought of that children could get into now that they're home 24/7.
Yeah.
So it may be just, reassessing your home and your schedule and trying to keep the kids as busy as possible. But, I think, child-proofing things all over again too. Like
taking a special look at, okay, what can they actually not get? Like, what do we need to look again at that goes up high? Even if you have a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, I mean, they could still totally get into mischief without, that you had thought was left behind. But the real thing is that, now they're eyeing that.
When you think about it, families that were typically were home on the weekends, but the parents may not have been distracted like they are during the work now, that they're trying to juggle all kinds of things, trying to figure out, how do we take care of family members that we don't live with, like maybe parents that need things, or how do we get our groceries? Like everything is just so different. We just don't jump in the car and go wherever we feel like it anymore. And so the families are at home longer, where they may have been taking rides or trips or going places, or so it's a lot to think about, especially when they're, like I said, they're probably trying to get their own work done.
Yeah, I think that's, in every case that I can think of, that is true, where you're seeing parents who have a demanding job. In some cases, some of the people that I've been speaking with, like they're under pressure. Like there have been tremendous layoffs, and so now their bosses are saying like, listen, you have to keep up your A game. And so that, they're trying to work.
How do you do that and be a homeschool teacher?
Yeah. And make sure that they are safe and fed and loved. I mean, it's and find food. Like if you have to be up until midnight because that's how you get into the Peapod line, that's how you can schedule your groceries a week or two out. And that's the only way. And then you have to be up at whatever time with your child or be on the next day. Like we are
And then have a
asking.
staff meeting or something else, or a meeting with a client. I mean, it's
Yep.
a
There's
lot
just,
to manage for families.
yeah.
But I think it's going to take a lot more organization. Like you may have, when your family was home together on weekends, you had probably a free schedule and you did things. Now that it's 7 days a week with your kids home and you're still trying to do your job and whatever, it may take just, much more organization, like have a schedule, like you're going to do this and this at that time while the kid's napping or your older child is doing their remote learning on Zoom with the teacher. It's just, I know for myself, I had to set up a schedule in the beginning. I was like, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
I need to know what I'm doing. I'm so used to going to school and this is what I do and this is my schedule. So I had to set up a schedule for myself and I have it posted right, by my desk. On Monday, I do this, Tuesday, this, because I had to schedule myself because it was really hard to manage and organize at first.
So this is mine for today. And I literally have, like, what I did was I wrote everything down that I was going to need to do today. And then I put it in order with like, number 1 is stretches. I have to do my stretches in the morning or I end up with a headache at the end of the day, right? Number 2, actually I wrote on here, number 2 is a walk. Usually it's got more to do with like my online work. But today I was like, just go for a walk, do it as soon as you start the day. And like it's very flexible, right? It's just words on a piece of paper that I then later on go back and put in some sort of order. So it doesn't have to be like complicated or computerized or anything like that. It's just how like setting intentions.
You could put a list, your schedule for a child or your children if you have more than one child, and post it on the refrigerator. Everyone has their schedule for the day. And that keeps things organized, because when kids don't have enough to do and they don't have a schedule and they're disorganized and
it can give you something to look forward to.
That's when they get into trouble.
Yeah.
They're going to find some things to do that are going to be challenging and interesting.
Yeah.
It might be fun to see what all those products look like when you dump them into the tub.
Yeah. What happens when I take a knife and smear peanut butter all over Daddy's bedroom? Like there's,
it's.
I think the other
years and being really super organized and scheduled.
Yeah. And then
children need to know what's happening too. They need to have an agenda.
Yeah, and something to look forward to.
They have a predictable schedule and.
Yeah.
At home, not so much, but we need to try to do that in the home somewhat too. Now.
And I think the other thing that I definitely want to say is if you don't live up, like a lot of days that, I never make it to, like today, for example, the third thing on my list, which is a pretty big thing, I have not done yet. Like I'm on 4 right now. So if, it may exactly, that's what I had to do. Like that's just how today worked out. So I try to think too about like being gentle with ourselves when we don't live up to those expectations. Number 1, and trying again tomorrow is the things. There have been so many times, so emotions are really high for everybody right now too. And I've noticed that like things that ordinarily wouldn't bother me have upset me greatly. Last night I added an ingredient to our dinner that made it impossible for one of the members to eat it. And I blew that like totally. And so we're sitting at dinner and I say something like, "Oh, I can taste the blah, blah, blah." And one of my family members looks at me and says, "Oh no." And I burst into tears because I was like, I have wrecked this person's dinner. Like,
was it an allergy?
Yeah. And I just thought, I just can't believe, And so the way I've been thinking of it is like the pandemic scored one then. Like, it was that the end of that day, the pandemic had one more point than usual. So I've been like joking, like, oh, pandemic 1, Karen 0 kind of a thing. And it's helping me like just knowing like we made it through. I actually got hugs from everyone because So you had mentioned allergy. So it actually isn't an allergy. It's more like we're trying to figure out a diet. One of our family members, I don't really have permission to talk about this on the show, but one of our family members is experiencing some like digestive distress, and we're just starting like this week on a special diet to make sure, like so that we can sort of pull everything out of the diet that might be a problem, and then slowly after a month or so add them back in. And so, we started that like yesterday, and I blew it on the very first day, basically, which was frustrating. But I got up this morning and it was like, try again tomorrow, so today I'm going to keep trying. And so I guess the reason I want to share that story is because if anybody's watching this or listening to this and feeling like I just can't, like everything I've tried has not worked, the schedule is not working, the children are still misbehaving, like I just can't. I think having some like telling ourselves it's okay. If someone else in your family is freaking out, telling them it's okay. Like, we're going to get through this. This is tough and it's high emotion, but we're going to get through it. And then being able to say, all right, I'm going to reset tomorrow, and tomorrow's going to be a better day. And inevitably, so in all of those situations that I've shared, like from coaching clients and stuff, inevitably the next day was a much better day. And they were like, okay, that was a blip. That was a tantrum. That was a meltdown. But now we're moving forward, and, it's not going to be like that every day. So Tricia, you have just muted yourself. Did you do that on purpose? You're muted.
No, I did not. I don't know why that happened.
Cool. Okay. Well, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that as well. Just the trying again tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely. We need to give ourselves some credit because this is something, we've never experienced before. We all have to shift gears and find our new normal.
Yeah.
And I remember in the beginning, and my son would laugh when he hears me say this, but when the first weekend that after we had closed school, I think it was like March 13th. March 12th was our last day of school. So March 13th. And then that was a Friday. So then that Saturday or Sunday, I was trying to figure it all out. And what am I going to do next week? And how am I going to, what's the remote learning going to look like? And I remember saying, I can't do this. I'm already like I have cabin fever. I'm stuck in the house. And because I was thinking towards what the future weeks were going to look like. And at that time, I think it was only supposed to be 3 weeks, but, and my son said to me, Mom, it's only been 2 days. But I was just trying to figure out how is this going to work and what am I going to do? And it's like so different and something I hadn't had to deal with before. But then as I went along and got used to my new normal, it's going to settle down,
Yeah. How do you feel about kids and news? Any thoughts on how parents could still get their news, but not necessarily involve the children, or I mean, like obviously we need to be able to answer their questions and stuff like that. But I don't know, thoughts on kids and exposure to news, how parents can help with that.
But I've always felt that way, even when we're not in the midst of a crisis, that there's a lot on the news that kids shouldn't be seeing.
Mm-hmm.
They can't make sense of. And you and I know that most of the time the news focuses on the negative things. So, you turn on the news now and it's, what's the death toll?
Yeah.
They show, people in the hospital and masks and, it's all very scary, I think, many children are afraid of people in masks anyway.
Yeah.
To them, it's like, that means that's the time I went to the hospital or I had to go to the doctor or get a shot or whatever. So that's very scary in itself for most children, that someone has their face covered, especially when it looks like a medical type mask.
Yeah. Because
that's something that a lot of children are dealing with. But the news, you think they're not listening. Sometimes their children are playing, you're listening to the news, or some people just have the TV on in the background or whatever, or they listen to the press conferences every day that's all about this, either from the governor or the president or whatever. But they're listening. They hear it. I would try to be very conscious of that and maybe look at the news online, like when the kids are sleeping or something, to keep yourself up to date with everything that's going on.
Yeah.
But I think just having the TV on for them to either hear in the background or even watch with you, I don't think it's a good idea right now. I think they're already scared enough.
Yeah.
You don't know what the long-term effect is too, for kids, like what they're thinking about all of this and thinking like the world's not a safe place anymore, which right now it really isn't, but it's how do you give them that sense of security and that the grown-ups are going to keep them safe?
Yeah. Probably not by having it on the news.
Not by seeing that on TV.
Yeah.
I know myself, as an adult, there are times when I can't watch it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I really have to regulate what I watch, read, and listen to, because if I don't, I can end up unable to keep going. I become sort of like paralyzed by all of the. I have had several anxiety attacks during this since.
Or I can't sleep. Like I'll think about it all night.
Yep. Or I'll wake up early. I learned a new word from my Uncle John's bathroom reader, and the word is I can't believe I'm sharing this, but the word is utchiare. I think it's spelled UHTCEARE. Utchiare, and what it means is that when it happens to you that you have woken up before dawn worrying. Utchiare. And it is a word from like the 1400s that's just sort of like not used anymore. I'm like, I love this word. It expresses it so perfectly. It's like exactly how I feel.
Is it a Latin word?
It is an Old English word. I don't know where it's derived from. I mean, I'm sure that someone listening is gonna be enough of a what is that called? Are you an entomologist? I think it's an entomologist, to a person who's really into words. And might be able to, like, chiare feels like it's got to come from CEARE. That's got to come from some recognizable place if you were knowledgeable about languages. So
I'll be Googling that when we get on this.
Uncle John's bathroom reader, baby. So I mean, I guess I just want to bring the conversation back to masks. Actually, was really kind of one of the things that we're wrapping up. Our time is getting short, and I have heard a couple of really great ways to help kids wear masks, because sometimes they have to wear them. But I wonder, Tricia, if you have had anybody in that situation, or if you how are you helping kids understand and work through the whole mask thing?
I haven't dealt with that yet because, I've thought about it for one of my YouTube videos, maybe, to bring that up. And I'm going to consult with my sister, who's a nurse, and the school psychologist to see how I could present that. But I thought of that for one of my future YouTube videos. But I haven't really talked about that. I haven't worn masks, obviously, with my Zoom classes because I'm in my house.
Yeah.
I'm wearing masks. They're in their homes. So I haven't really brought up that subject yet.
I'm thinking of a time when we used to be in the middle school, in the Mendez school, and that was right downtown, so we could walk to, for example, the fire station. We used to walk to we would have everybody with their little hand-holdy things, and we would all walk to the fire station. And one year, I got to be the person who put on all the equipment, including.
I remember that.
Do you remember that? That was
yes.
First of all, that was so much fun. That was the year that Mrs. Dommings, she came down the pole. She slid down the pole. Oh my God, so much fun.
Yeah.
And I can remember saying all right, I'm going to put on this mask. Am I still going to be Miss Locke? You know what I mean? And they would see me in it, and it actually might be useful for them if you were to put on a mask, not to start with a mask, but to say, okay, everybody, I'm putting on, here I am. Is it still Miss Tomaso in here? Kind of to help them understand that a little bit. One idea that I've heard was to encourage them to play either as like a doctor who's working on, so you've got your mask on, who's working on your stuffed friend or something like that, like your stuffed animal, or to put a mask on a stuffed animal, or to sort of play with dolls or their like stuffed friends, so that they are getting more comfortable, more used to the whole idea of a mask. I can't even imagine what that would be like to try and have a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old keep a mask on.
I know. I like that idea. Maybe I can put together some guidelines to send out to the parents too. They have been exposed a little bit. Again, we don't do the fire station visit, but we had the firefighters come to us and do that. They put the masks on and all the things. And also we had the dentist visit, and he put on a mask, and one of the children wore a mask. So they got to see that.
Cool.
But it's much more prevalent in their world now. If they go outside, they're going to see lots of people in masks.
Yeah.
And actually, my hometown of Milford, they now require everyone that goes out to be wearing a mask.
And as of
could be admitted to any public place without one.
As of Monday, that is the case in Bellingham as well. So I wonder if that might have actually been a state thing at this point. The state had been saying this is a good idea, and now they're saying.
I'm not sure. Maybe it is. I mean, it's a good thing if it is, but I just read it. I think it was the Milford Daily News online, and I saw that from Milford.
So I went to a store for like the third time yesterday ever since this has started, and I wore a mask. That was the first time I'd worn it. Like the last time was weeks and weeks ago. I think the first week out of because we were in quarantine for 2 weeks coming home from Colorado, and we were fine. And then we went to the grocery store that week, and we went to Target that week. And like for neither of those, I wore a mask because I didn't. That was sort of before it was in the zeitgeist that like you should be wearing a mask. And so so yesterday was the first time that I wore one out, and it felt. I mean, it's a friendly mask. The people in the store were also one of them was wearing an absolutely adorable mask. Like it had, do you remember there's stuffed animals called Ugly Monsters? I think it's UGLI. And they're like all different shapes, and they're primary colors, and they're very adorable. And so he had these little, like they were all over the mask. And I was like, thank goodness. Like at least you can make them friendly. You can make them.
Yes, you can make them out of different material.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that though. When you're trying to teach kids social skills and everybody's wearing a mask, that's tricky.
It is. I saw something actually just this morning, and I believe I posted it on Facebook. So I don't know if you've been on Facebook, but what is it like to be a deaf person when everyone is wearing masks?
Wow.
If you need to see someone's lips and mouth, even when you pair it with signs, that's a problem.
Yeah.
To people that read lips. And I saw there was a mask, and I wanted to look to see where you could purchase them, but the mouth part was clear, like a clear plastic, so you could see the lips and mouth.
Oh, cool.
And the rest was cloth. And I thought, gee, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Not only for someone with a hearing impairment, but those children that are learning to socialize, or they need to use the facial cues.
Yeah. And there's an instinctiveness to this. When you're a little kid, I mean, we're not like, I think even as adults, right? We will get a feeling about someone from their body language, from their facial expression, and I mean, I can totally see how important that is, especially for young children. Like if I am in a store, I do try to smile with my eyes. I sort of try to smile behind my mask, but boy, it's tricky.
It is. Yeah. And then you think of, the kids that are involved in speech and language therapy. How do you do that if your mouth's covered and the child's mouth is covered?
Yeah.
That's sort of like set of problems. Or children on the spectrum that you're trying to teach.
Yeah.
How to look at facial cues and
Yeah.
pick up on that. And so those masks I thought were interesting, that you could see the mouth through
Yeah. So
the
you
clear part of it.
you can see if someone's smiling at you. You can see. I like that. I do.
Yeah, I think it would be less scary for kids. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird. We're sort of ready to wrap up, but I feel like I want to go out on some, I don't know, something positive, a positive thought or some advice. I think you have raised and we've been able to talk about a ton of fantastic, subjects and ideas, a lot of really, really good stuff in this conversation. Even in the midst of all this sort of uncertainty, how are you framing that for your children, for yourself, for the parents of your kiddos? Like, what are you saying or thinking when you think to yourself, "Oh my God, like I just don't know. There's so much uncertainty." How are you getting yourself through that positively, I guess?
Well, as you've known me for a lot of years, so you know that I'm a positive person.
Yeah.
So I usually frame things and my perception of things and try to stay within that positive lens and trying to, promote that in others and help others to see that way too. So and of course, I have days when I feel down about it too. Like, we can't celebrate my parents' 65th anniversary.
Yeah.
We can't get together. So we have to find other ways. So, and then Easter, I was sad on Easter because I'm so used to my family getting together for dinner and having a great time and all of that. And so some of those things, when I start to feel down about it, I'm thinking, I'm lucky that I've had all those experiences and they're not gone forever. So I, think about what I'm thankful for in my life. And I try to think this is temporary. These are, we're inconvenienced or we're giving up things temporarily so that we can have them again in the future. Because if we don't, there'll be much more loss.
Yes.
So I just think I'm very fortunate to have this. And yes, I'm disappointed that we have to make these changes and
that it has to be this way.
Family things. It's the family get-togethers that I miss the most because that's a real important part of my life. So, but I know that it's not forever. Like we will, at another point in time when it's safe, have a new tradition or celebrate the anniversary at a different time. My niece was supposed to get married in April in Texas. So, that's postponed also. Like just, but they'll come back and we will have those traditions again and make new ones. They may look a little bit different,
But that's maybe not a bad thing, right?
Normal. We'll have a new type of normal. But I think just thinking about what are you grateful for? And those things that you miss the most, are not gone forever. That this is just temporary.
Yeah. I love that.
And these are the sacrifices we need to make to keep everybody healthy.
Yeah. And you even said before, I'm so lucky. Like you've actually said that a couple of times, like in speaking about your, I think you said a friend, one of your closest friends who's in rehab and is going through so much. And you were like, I don't have anything to complain about here. I'm so lucky. And if we can kind of think about how fortunate we are. In fact, a lot of time, like every time I have a conversation with someone, I'll hear about their challenges and I'll think like, wow, like there's, and how, especially if someone is working through something in a really cool and inspiring way, staying positive, doing the things, that they need to do. I think that's that's a really, really wonderful message about understanding that you're lucky and not taking that for granted and thinking about what are you grateful for. That's wonderful.
Like, you think about it's a terrible time for everyone, but there are some positives that could come from it.
Yeah.
Families more connected, people not taking their blessings for granted.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, caring about other people, making these sacrifices so other people are safe, not only yourself.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. And, when you look at it, the environment. I don't know if you've seen like things in the news about, the air is cleaner.
Yeah, because nobody's driving.
Animal activity is different. I think I saw there were baby turtles on the Galapagos Islands for like the first time in 100 years or something. And
wow.
The Himalayan mountains could be seen now through all the smog. And the skyline of Los Angeles like changed within just a month. So I think there are a lot of messages that we can get from this and hopefully move forward in a more positive direction. Like take those lessons and make change.
Yeah, I love that. And it makes me think too, it makes me think of just even in our own homes, like maybe we're establishing routines now that that are better than the ones that we had before, and maybe I was talking with a coaching client the other day and she was saying, I've been talking to my child's school. She's got, I think, a first grader. And she's like, I've been talking to my child's school and I've been saying like, listen, what the way he's been learning to read has been a real struggle for him. Is it okay if we try this other way? And they were like, absolutely, and so I just love parents are seeing, things in their children that they hadn't seen before and being able to take a different approach because we're all home now and maybe it's a better approach, I think there's a lot, I keep coming back to this saying. I have an inspirational calendar and one of the like February or March sayings in it was, difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations. And I think that's so true, so.
It is.
Yeah.
And sometimes you see on the news, we talked about the news and sometimes the negative influence. Sometimes they'll focus on the small percentage of people that are not doing the right thing.
Yes.
They're out saying, I have the right to be out here without a mask. I'm protesting. I want everything opened up, and those kinds of things. But to then look at that, well, the majority of people are doing what they need to do for others. That doesn't represent all of us. It's, I think, and that's hard for kids to filter that out. Like they see that negativity on the news. It's hard for us, but you think, they might think, oh, that's what all people are doing, so sheltering them from that somewhat, especially in this time of crisis, I think is a good idea.
Yeah. Super important to accentuate the positive.
You can control what you tell them about it. And you can, rather than having them see these like haunting images.
Yeah.
They might not express to you verbally, but they might be traumatized inside about some image they saw.
Yeah. And they might believe something.
Internalize it, and then you might never know that this particular couple of seconds of something they saw on TV might have traumatized them.
And then does that become a part of like, well, that's how they view the world, and we so we talk a lot about on this show about how like things like that happen. Even if you don't intend it, if your child grabs the remote and turns on the TV and what was on last night, comes and it's CNN or something like that, and they happen to see something, like they're going to be okay. I think that's so important to emphasize too. And it's making me think of a kid when we worked together. This little boy is probably in his 20s now, which I just think is completely wild. But anyway, he was 4 at the time, and he snuck out of bed and ended up watching like an episode of the X-Files. And it was like so, we can't always be there for every one of those things to prevent every one of those things.
And, with the media and all that they have access to, it's hard to
really limit.
Sheltered from things.
But
we just do the best we can.
Exactly. That's really where I want to wrap up. We're going to do the best we can. We're going to try and stay positive. We're going to try again tomorrow.
We all have days where we're like, this, I didn't do a great job of this remote learning today, or social distancing, or I'm feeling kind of down about it because everything's so uncertain. like you said, tomorrow's another day.
Yep. Yep.
And then,
try again tomorrow.
I think just before you go to sleep, you can think, this day wasn't my best, but what was good about today?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
What were the
Always
points about today.
Always staying with the positive. I love it. Oh, Tricia Tomaso, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show again, to have you, here for Okaycon 2020. I know personally, like today happens to be a Friday in April, and I am going to be just so much feeling lighter and happier for the rest of this day because we've had our conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Karen.
Good to see you too.
Until the next time.
Yes, until next time.